Hare Krishna. First of all, again, a pleasure to be able to speak to address all of you today. Actually, tomorrow is the appearance day of Ramanuja Acharya, but uh, since this program is today, we will honor him by speaking some things about him and the unique two qualities that he brought to Lord Chaitanya's movement, uh, which is uh, exclusive, you know, um, Eka Bhakti Sharana, exclusive devotion to the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and uh, Vaishnava Jane Sevana, the dedication to serving the devotees of the Lord. These were two services given to him by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I wanted to begin by explaining that. How did that happen? Because Ramanujacharya appeared uh, about 500 years before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So how could Mahaprabhu instruct him? So this is a very interesting revelation of how the Lord plans everything so wonderfully so that his Sankirtan movement, so that his desire, his will can be enacted in so many wonderful ways through the combination of the efforts of his pure devotees, or the parampara combined with different, sometimes different paramparas or different lines of devotion that can all came to be fully combined, enriched, and presented by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the six Goswamis of Vrindavan. So Ramanujacharya, he was uh, a great devotee from his very birth. He exhibited unique, wonderful, exemplary qualities, just like uh, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was born. Because his father, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, had petitioned the Lord. The petitioning the Lord is sometimes um, a very great dilemma for a devotee, because on the one hand, we never want to burden the Lord. I'll mention something about pastime of one of Ramanuja's disciples afterwards about burdening the Lord. So we never want to burden him, but he says, Sarvadharmam paricha ja mamitam sharanam raja, that we must surrender to him, and he will give us everything. Aham tvam sarva papadyo mokshai shami mashuchaha. He says, do not fear, I will give you everything. Yogakshemam baham yaham. I will give anything you lack, I will give, and everything you have, I will preserve. From a material point of view, this sounds like, um, birthday or Christmas. So many gifts from the Lord. But from a devotional point of view, we have no other choice. We have to obey him. He says, I will give you everything. What does he ask from us? Exclusive devotion. Of course, that's a pretty big price. But in any case, it is the arrangement that the Lord has made. So a devotee very carefully only requests something. This was given to us by Rupa Goswami in his introduction to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and Srila Prabhupada in his introduction to Nectar of Devotion, where he says that Lord Kapila asked the Lord to give him exclusive devotion and not even desiring liberation. So we have to ask the Lord something. Srila Prabhupada explains in a purport to a prayer by Prahlad Maharaj to Lord Nrsimhadev that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that whenever you address the Lord, you must ask for something. because Krishna says aham sarva, that he says that I'm sorry, aham sarvasya prabhavam mata sarvam pravartate. So everything that's material and spiritual comes from me. So how can we get it unless we request the Lord? So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur requested the Lord, please send me a servant. And that servant, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was born with his umbilical cord wrapped around as a Brahmin thread, which meant he will establish the strict uh, principle of devotion to the Lord and the sadhana by which it will be followed. Then he was adorned by the garland of Lord Jagannath, and such a great devotee. So Ramanuja was a similar devotee. He was uh, such a great, he immediately became a scholar, and he was sent to the school of the most renowned teacher at that time in the place where he lived, which was Kanchipuram, and very famous. Of course, many of you know, especially those from anywhere from India, but especially South India, Kanchipuram has two great temples, uh, the temple of Lord Shiva and the temple of Lord Vishnu. So Bhardaraj is the main deity there. Bhardaraj, the giver of blessing. And of course, most people go there to try to get blessing. But the devotees see that the blessing is just getting the Lord's darshan, just having the opportunity to perform devotional service. But the blessing for a devotee is really the mercy of Shri Guru and Gauranga. That is our blessing. In the month of Damodar, we celebrate Mother Yashoda always being unable to tie Krishna by two fingers. And what do those two fingers represent? The Lord's mercy and the devotee's endeavor. These two things are intertwined eternally in the life of a devotee. But what comes first? The Lord's mercy. And how does the Lord's mercy reach us? Guru Krishna Prasadi by Bhakti Laktabhi. That by the mercy of Krishna, we get a spiritual master, and by the mercy of the spiritual master, we get the seed of devotion, and we get the opportunity to serve Krishna and the knowledge by which to do so. So, and then the devotee has to respond. In a very wonderful verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, 8th chapter, I think it's verse 4 or 5, that Shukadeva Goswami says that Shradadana, what is it? I can't remember the verse right now. Anyway, I can't remember the verse, but the verse says that by one's sincere endeavor, and by one's sincerity and by one's endeavor, one can achieve achieve after a very short time that the Lord will become fully manifest in the devotee's heart. So, anyway, so this is what the combination of these two things: sincerity, which means hearing and chanting carefully about Krishna, and sincerity combined with seriousness. Seriousness means obeying the desires of the Lord and his devotees. So Ramanujacharya embodied these principles. So he was sent to the school of one Mayavad, because most of the teachers at that time, especially in South India, were Mayavad. Actually, Ramanujacharya was the one who defeated Mayavad philosophy. Up to that point, practically everyone, there was a small pocket of devotees of Vishnu, but they were not preachers. Of course, preceding Ramanujacharya was Yamunacharya, and Yamunacharya he established his fame by defeating the Pandit, the main priest of the king at that time. His spiritual master was being challenged by the head priest, who was very proud, very knowledgeable. But unfortunately, sometimes along with knowledge comes pride. Just like Queen Kunti says that Janmaishvara Shuta Shri Vir Edamanam, that these four things, you know, good birth or good reputation, wealth, knowledge, and personal beauty or very wonderful qualities can increase the fever of material existence. Of course, anything used in the service of the Lord, knowledge, beauty, good qualities, good reputation, becomes an asset. Srila Prabhupada, his classic example is you can have so many zeros, like all of the qualities we may acquire in this material world are like a chain of zeros. But when you put the one in front of it, the more zeros there are, the more valuable it becomes. So whatever we can utilize in Krishna service becomes, whatever we know or whatever we have becomes very valuable if we learn the science and the secret of how to offer everything to Krishna. And these acharyas like Ramanuja down to Srila Prabhupada, from the beginning of when Vaishnavism was restored by Ramanujacharya. Because previous to Ramanuja, from the fall of spirituality by Kali Yuga, the first fall was Buddhism. Buddhism replaced the caste Brahmanism, which was so predominant and so destructive, that Buddha was sent. Actually, he was Lord Shiva, and he was sent to destroy the improper use of yajna to kill animals. And then his philosophy was modified by Shankaracharya. And Shankaracharya reintroduced the Vedas and certain Vedic principles. And then Ramanuja took the Vedic principles and established them in relation to Vishnu. So such an important devotee. He actually revived Vaishnavism when it had been practically, it just existed in different pockets in different places, in some big temples, but there were no preachers. So Ramanuja was destined to be a preacher. And so his spiritual master, Yadava Prakash, he was a sold out Mayavad. So one day, Yadava Prakash, he was teaching his students, and he quoted one verse from Chandogya Upanishad, Kasyapam Pundarikam Evam Akshini. And he gave as the explanation of that verse, he said, Kapyasam means a monkey, the rear end of a monkey. And Pundarika is lotus, and Eva Akshini, the eyes. So he said to his students, this means that the eyes of the Lord are red like the behind of a monkey. So Ramanuja, when he heard that, he couldn't take it. And he challenged his guru, who became very upset. And of course, he offset it by his intelligence, saying, no. It's by your mercy that I can speak. And they go, oh, okay. Proud guru, yes, by my mercy. All right. And he said, kapi means, either kapi means a straw, it can also mean withdrawing water. So kapi asam means the sun, which takes the water and turns it into cloud. So therefore, what it means is, and the sun, Pundarikaksham, also means, or asa means to blossom. So it means the Lord's eyes are like the blossoming lotus flower. And everyone was amazed. But his guru became very envious. And then after that, when his guru was teaching, um, he was teaching a Mayavad philosophy and giving different quotes from different shastras and Upanishads and misinterpreting them. So Ramanuja defeated that, and so the envy was so great, and we see this greatness of this envy everywhere in the world nowadays. That he decided he conspired with his other students who were sold out to his Mayavad conception. We have to kill, we have to kill this boy, Ramanuja. And so Ramanuja, he was, so they planned a trip, but his cousin, whose name was Govinda, his cousin found out about the plot against him. They were going to take him into the forest, kill him, and then say he was killed by some wild animal, and that was their whole plan, to get rid of him. This is very popular, thing to do amongst very politically minded persons. So Ramanuja found out about it, and he left. He left the group, and he wandered in the forest, remembering that the Lord promises that I will always protect my devotee. So he wandered, and then he came upon a hunter and his wife, and the hunter and his wife took him in, and in one day, they took him to a certain well. They told him to go get water and rest. And after he finished, they were gone. And he went over a hill, and there was Kanchipuram. In one day, he had been transported for, hundreds of, maybe thousands of kilometers or miles back to Kanchipuram. And when he arrived back, everyone was amazed. And he told his mother and some others that he told his that what happened, but he told them, don't say anything, don't say anything. So he went back to the school of his guru, but then he got kicked out again for challenging Mayavad philosophy, and he was just studying by himself. And the great Acharya Yamunacharya, he heard about Ramanuja's brilliance, and he wanted to meet him. And so he sent one of his disciples, Mahapurna, to bring Ramanuja to Sri Rangam, which is the place where he was presiding, the famous deity of Ranganath, one of the most huge, beautiful deities of South India. And but when Ramanuja arrived, Yamunacharya had been ill, and when he arrived, he had left his body. So Ramanuja, and they said, please come and take darshan of Lord Ranganath. He said, no, this form of the Lord is very cruel. He has taken away the Acharya who was supposed to teach me. And then he went to take darshan of the body of Yamunacharya, and he noticed that 3 of his fingers were very tightly, against the rest of his hand. They weren't extended. And so Ramanuja, he meditated on the Lord, and he said in front of Yamunacharya, I promise that I will preach the glories of the Lord everywhere. And one of his fingers uncurled. And then he said, I promise that I will give everyone the proper understanding of Vaishnavism, Krishna consciousness, and I will establish the worship of the deity. And another finger unfolded. And then he said, I will have a disciple, and I will name him Parasara, after the great sage who gave so many instructions in Vishnu Purana, and the 3rd finger unfurled. And therefore Ramanuja was so happy that Ramanujacharya was able to instruct him in this way. I mean, that Yamunacharya was able to instruct him. Yamunacharya established his fame as a young boy, just like Ramanuja. As a young boy, he defeated uh, he defeated one of the greatest scholars, a very envious person, and by saying a riddle that could not be defeated, his challenge was uh, defeat the idea that the king is a pious man, that the queen is a chaste lady, and that your mother is not barren. And so the scholar was completely bewildered. If I say that, I will insult the king and my wife. And he became very angry and he said, "You're just trying to trick me into saying something that's an insult. You should be punished unless you can defeat those arguments." He said, "Yes, your mother only had one son. And therefore, according to Manu Samhita, when a woman only has one son, she is considered still to be barren. So your mother is barren." The king, he, um, the king takes 1/6 of all the pious activities of all of his citizens, but he also, according to Manu Samhita, has to take 1/6 of all their impious activities, and therefore the king is impious by that arrangement. And the queen, because the king is the embodiment of all the demigods, the queen is married to so many demigods, and therefore, in one sense, she is not chaste. The man was defeated, Yamunacharya won, and he established his greatness. He became bewildered because the acharyas, by their lives, they teach us something. They teach us by everything they do, and sometimes they're put into predicaments, just like Arjuna's predicament, being bewildered by Yoga Maya, revealed the Bhagavad Gita. And Parikshit Maharaj, his bewilderment of insulting Samikya Rishi, revealed the Srimad Bhagavatam. And in the case of Yamunacharya, he revealed to us the danger which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited, which is such a great danger for saintly persons, meeting with a king, opulences, unnecessary opulences. And Yamunacharya became he became the king, and he became bewildered by all that opulence and association with the opposite sex. He was saved by the servant of his grandfather, and um, and he came back to his spiritual life. He gave up his kingdom, and he became such a great acharya. And he wanted Ramanuja to replace him. So Ramanuja went on studying, and finally um, Mahapurna, who was one of the greatest disciples uh, of Yamunacharya, was sent to initiate him. He took initiation. And then, after being initiated, Mahapurna sent him to Goshtipurna, another great uh, devotee who was expert in mantras. And being expert in mantras, uh, this Goshtipurna did not want to give Ramanuja. He didn't know Ramanuja. And he had understood that this mantra that he had, 8-syllable mantra of Narayan, could only be given to someone who's completely pure. But everyone pleaded to him that Ramanuja is so great. And Ramanuja 18 times begged him to give the mantra, and he wouldn't give it. So, but finally, seeing Ramanuja's determination and everyone's recommendation, finally, he said to him, "I'm going to give you this mantra, but it cannot be given to anyone who has the slightest contamination in their heart." He gave him the mantra, Om Namo Narayana. And then Ramanuja went out and he saw the people in their suffering conditions of ignorance, totally ignoring the greatness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He went to town square and said, I want to give you all the greatest gifts. And so everyone came and called everyone, the whole town came. And he said, by chanting this mantra, you will all be relieved from all your sinful activities, and you will be able to achieve liberation, and you will be able to escape all fear, lamentation, and anxiety. And so he chanted the mantra, Om Namo Narayana, and everyone chanted. And he went back to Goshtapurna. And Goshtapurna said, you have the audacity to show your face after you disrespect and insult me. I don't want to even see your face. The only destiny for you is hell. And Ramanuja folded his hands and he said, my dear Guru, he said, I understood that. When you gave me this mantra and you said it can purify, it's so pure that it can purify the heart. I thought, it's a very small price that an insignificant person like me goes to hell if everyone can achieve liberation at the lotus feet of the Lord. And therefore I gave it to them, and I'm willing to go to hell. Just like the gopis who were approached by Narada Muni to give dust from their feet to cure Krishna's headache. Previously, the Brahmins had been approached, and the Brahmins responded, dust from our feet on the Lord's head will be cursed. No, sorry. He went to the queens of Dwarka, and they said, we could never insult the Lord in that way. We'd be willing to give the dust, but this would be an insult to the Lord, and I'm afraid that this would make the Lord unhappy, the impurity of our feet. And when the gopis were approached, they said, we'll be happy to. And Narada Muni said, but you may go to hell. They said, oh, that's all right. We can go to hell if Krishna will be pleased. So when Goshtapurna heard Ramanuja, he got up and he embraced him. And he said, my dear son, you are the guru and I am the disciple. Just like there are many instances like that. One of them was with Mukunda. Mukunda had a son, Raghunandan. And Raghunandan was left to serve the Lord when Mukunda, he was a doctor. He had to go attend a patient. And he said to his son, make sure the Lord gets it and takes his offering. So being a young boy, he put the offering on the altar. And he said, my Lord, please eat. So the Lord was there, Krishna, deity of Krishna. And the deity didn't do anything. So he said, you have to eat. My father said you have to eat. And he started crying and he begged him, please, please, my father is my authority. And therefore I must serve you. And so the deity got down and took the offering. And Raghunandan was very happy. His father came back, asked, where are the remnants? His wife said, there are no remnants. Huh? Did my son eat the remnants? He said the deity ate them. And so he grabbed his son, my dear son, you can show, where did you hide all those remnants? No, the deity ate them. And he said it with such sincerity that Mukunda said, let us do another offering. But this time, make sure the Lord leaves some remnants. So he again offered to the Lord. He said, my dear Lord, please accept this offering. Please take it, but please leave something for my father. And Mukunda was looking from behind the altar. And the Lord took half the offering and said, oh, and left the other half. And then later on, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw Mukunda, he said, my dear Mukunda, who is the father and who is the son? And Mukunda said, oh, Raghunandan is the father. I am the son. So the greatness of a devotee is not by some position, but the greatness of a devotee is by the level of his surrender, the level of his devotion. So Ramanuja was so surrendered. And so dedicated that no one could equal his, his level of devotion. And then his guru sent him, now this is something very unique and important for ISKCON. His guru sent him to two other gurus. You know, one was Vararanga, to learn certain aspects of Dharma from the Dharma Shastras. And he sent him to another one, Malapurna, to learn other aspects of devotion. Of course, he actually ended up instructing those two. But the point is, we live in a multi-guru society. Therefore, as Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, I offer my respectful obeisances to my Diksha Guru and to my unlimited Shiksha Guru, which is something very important, which Ramanujacharya taught us. It's not that we belong, any of us belong to a guru cult. We belong to the movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We are Rupanugas. We are followers of Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada has established such a wonderful, vast, beautiful society in which there are so many people in the course of our lifetime who will give us different instructions at different times in different places. And we have to learn to serve all of these Vaishnavas. Now, and another reason why Ramanuja did this is something that I introduced. When Ramanuja began to travel and preach, he, by inspiration, he went to Jagannath Puri. He had heard that in Jagannath Puri, that the worship was not according to, you know, the South Indian standard, was much, much stricter. So he went to Jagannath Puri, and he saw that the worship was very different. It was like very relaxed. Sometimes the priest didn't bathe properly. Sometimes they didn't purify the offering properly. Even Pundarik Vidyanidhi, he was a very strict devotee. And in the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he went to Jagannath, when he was in Jagannath Puri, one day on the altar, he saw in the Odana Shasti ceremony where they put new clothing on Lord Jagannath. He saw this clothing it's still starch. You know, anybody who's bought anything in India, you know that when you first get the cloth, it has so much starch in it, you can stand it up and it won't fall over. You know? And so he saw all of that, and his good friend, Swarup Damodar, said, that is the custom here. And he said, no, it should not be done like that. And Swarup Damodar said, Lord Jagannath has accepted the custom. But because Pundarik was senior in age and senior by his relationship with Lord Chaitanya, he didn't argue anymore. Pundarik went back to his quarters. That night, Lord Jagannath and Balaram appeared in a dream, and with their two arms, they started slapping him on the face. They said, don't try to change our devotees. We like them as they are. And so he woke up in the morning, he looked in a reflection, and he saw his face was bright red from being slapped in the dream. So he didn't go to the temple. Sort of Damodar was worried. He's an old man. Something's happened. You know, COVID. No, he didn't think about COVID, but something may have happened. So he went and knocked on the door, and Pundarik said, yes, it's me, Swarup. I said, oh, I'm not feeling well. And he said, no, please open the door. So he had to open the door, and Swarup Damodar said, what happened to your face? And he explained everything. And then Swarup Damodar said, you are the greatest devotee. Many devotees have had dreams of the Lord, but I don't know anyone where the result of the dream manifested on the external platform. You are the greatest devotee. So Ramanuja went there. he made an appointment with the head priest and the director of the temple to try to correct all the worship. And he said, tomorrow morning we will meet. That night, Lord Jagannath appeared to him. And Lord Jagannath said, I am sending you to Kurmak Kshetra, which is about 600, 700 kilometers to south of Jagannath Puri. He said, these devotees and their method of devotion has been established by me. I want them to worship me like this. They are not descendants of pure Brahmins, but they are the purest devotees. And then he said, you will learn something very wonderful. Tomorrow you will arrive in Kurmak Kshetra, but I want you to go to a very special place called Navadvip. There, I want you to receive the mercy of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And of course, Mahaprabhu had not appeared. And then Lord Jagannath began to explain that he said, I will appear very soon in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he described the Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he said, so I want you to learn this and teach the certain principles to the world. And Ramanuja became ecstatic and he said, I will tell everyone about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I will spread his glories everywhere. And Lord Jagannath said, no. You should preach devotion to Lord Vishnu. And you should preach, you should understand exactly what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants from you. And therefore, he eagerly went to Navadvip. He understood that he cannot reveal Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said, this will ruin his mood. He wants to appear as a devotee. And when he arrived there, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared before him. And he said, my dear Ramanuja, you are my great devotee. I am giving you the task of reestablishing devotion to me, exclusive devotion to me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in my form as Ranganath, in my form as Vadadaraj, and in all of my different deity forms where I have appeared. You must preach this. And also, because you are such an expert servant of the devotees, you are a devotee of the devotee of the devotee, you should preach by your example and by your teaching this very important factor, which is service to the Vaishnava. Now, one time Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was approached by a Brahmin. This Brahmin was in great anxiety. He said that that I have blasphemed a devotee, but that devotee has left. I can't find him. How will I ever be relieved from this offense? No, I understand that only by begging from that devotee I could. So how will I be relieved? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, you must do two things. You incessantly chant the holy name of the Lord, and every Vaishnava you see, you must serve them. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, later on, when he was speaking to Nimbarkacharya, he said, I have taught the four main acharyas of the four main Vaishnava sampradayas two things. And the two things he taught to Ramanuja, that Ramanuja would teach the world, and later Lord Chaitanya would take all of those 8 principles and combine them. Those 8 principles were from Ramanuja. It was the devotion to this devotional service and surrender to the Supreme Lord and service to the devotees. From Madhvacharya, worshiping the deity of Krishna and defeating Mayavad philosophy. From Vishnu Swami, the exclusive devotion to Krishna as the Supreme Person, and to worship in the mood of raga marg, or spontaneous devotion. And from Nimbarka, dedication, exclusive dedication to Srimati Radharani and Gopi Baba. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took from the four great acharyas the two great principles that each one of them taught. And so in this way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arranged that Ramanujacharya was the forebringer of the original two principles by which those other principles can be awoken. Because by devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and by serving the Vaishnava, which was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's recommendation, that one can be freed from material existence. And then one can understand Krishna as the Supreme Person. One worships the deity. One gains attraction for the beautiful form of Krishna in Vrindavan. One enters into a Ragamarg, and on that platform, one can worship exclusively Srimati Radharani and her servants. So this is our sampradaya. Ramanujacharya was chosen to be the one who put the first anchor of the movement, the Sankirtan movement of pure devotional service. It's firmly in the annals of Vaishnava philosophy. So I just wanted to mention a couple more things that are very amazing about Ramanuja's life, which are very instructive to us. A couple of three particular pastimes, very, very instructive. One of them is that he did what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did and what Srila Prabhupada did. What was that? He left his wife at an early age. Or in Prabhupada's case, it wasn't really an early age, but it was probably before he was ready to do it. So Ramanuja was married. He was very strict. And one day he invited his Shiksha Guru, whose name was Kanchi Purna, and to take prasadam, because Kanchi Purna was from a Shudra family, although he was a great devotee. After his wife fed him, she gave the remnants to a Shudra lady, considering that her husband's a Brahmin and not worthy of getting those remnants. So he became very angry, but he forgave her. Then she, when he brought his guru and his guru's wife to live with him, his wife insulted the wife of the guru, and the guru and his wife left. And then he was ready. He was already ready to give her up, but he said, "No, I have to follow religious principles." But then a poor Brahmin who was practically starving came to his house, and she said to him, "I don't have time for you." And so the Brahmin went. He was in anxiety, and he met Ramanuja. Ramanuja said, "My dear Brahmin, what is wrong?" "Oh, I went to your house, but I couldn't get anything to eat, so I still have to beg." And he said, "I will give you the best meal in your life and so many wondrous things. I'm going to write a letter. You take it to my wife and say it comes from her father." And the letter was directed, Ramanuja wrote a letter to himself, supposedly coming from her father. "My dear son, your wife's sister is getting married. She must go at once. No, go at once. Come and help me with all the arrangements." So he gave the Brahmin the note. The Brahmin delivered it, and she was so happy she fed him sumptuously, and gave him some presents, some dakshin, or some money. And then Ramanuja came, and she showed him the letter. He said, "Oh, I have to do something. You go ahead, and I'll join you later." And immediately after she left, he took sannyas. Sent the letter saying that was a one-way ticket, and then he took sannyas. So the point is that in normal society, and even in our devotee society, we would never allow that. Some devotee has a young wife, and he all of a sudden decides that, "No, this marriage thing is too complicated. Let me take sannyas." And we've seen this happen before. It turns out it's a disaster. And But when it's really for a higher cause, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed, he left his young wife and elderly mother. Srila Prabhupada left his grown children and his wife, who definitely wasn't interested in taking vanaprastha. Why? All for a higher purpose. So every devotee at some point in life will have to make that choice. Here is my continuing lifestyle as I have developed it. I have my deity, I worship, and that's all right. But at some point, all of us will be tested. What is the nature of your devotion? At the very least, that test will come at the time of death. What is the degree of your devotion? Srila Prabhupada many times quoted a Bengali proverb, which I never memorized. But basically it says, your sadhana will be tested at the time of death. You may be very knowledgeable. You may be very, expert in certain things, but your real conviction will be tested at the time of death. So Ramanuja showed us that we should always live for the highest principle. We should always live for defending the absolute truth. This is the highest thing beyond everything else. So that was Ramanuja's ability to go preach. So he converted his cousin after Ramanuja had been exiled or left to be dead. His cousin became a devotee of Shiva. And then one of Ramanuja's dear friends converted him back to Vaishnavism. And that dear friend delivered Govinda to the lotus feet of Ramanuja. And he became the most dedicated disciple. So one day Ramanuja found Govinda lying on the bed of his guru. And he said, how can you do this? How can you put your body on the property of the guru? And he said, I know that I could go to hell for this, but I want to make sure that the bed is soft and everything is all right for my guru. So Ramanuja. And another time, Ramanuja caught him putting his finger in the mouth of a snake repeated times, as if he were killing the snake and also endangering himself of being bitten. And he said, what are you doing, Govinda? And he said, oh, this snake has a thorn in his mouth and he was suffering. So I had to reach in his mouth and take out the thorn. It took me a few tries. Ramanuja couldn't believe but then the third time, Govinda was speaking to other disciples and they said, Govinda, you are the greatest devotee. And he said, yes, I know. He's become so puffed up. They went to Ramanuja and they said, Govinda said this. Ramanuja called him. How can you say that? And he said, my dear Lord, that because everything I have and everything I'm made of is coming from you. When they said that I am the best devotee, I accepted because any qualities that they may have found in me only come from you. So therefore, I could see they were only glorifying you, and I had to agree. As Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, yoga charikitu nachipai tomara karuna saga, that my dear Gurudev, I am totally composed. I am totally made up of your mercy. So Ramanuja was amazed by this devotion because he had taught this level of devotion. And the last thing I wanted to mention to conclude, that Ramanuja had a disciple named Dhanurdas. Dhanurdas was a wrestler. He met Dhanurdas one day during a procession of Lord Ranganath. And Dhanurdas was carrying an umbrella of a beautiful lady. And Ranganath was right there in front of him, but he was looking at the eyes of the lady. And he wouldn't take his eyes off the lady. So Ramanuja called him over, and servant came and said, Ramanujacharya wants to speak to me. To me? He came and he said, why are you looking like that? at your wife's eyes. Oh, she's not my wife. She's a prostitute. What? She has the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen. I can't stop looking at them. And he said, if I can show you some more beautiful eyes, will you take your eyes off of hers? Oh, of course. So he grabbed him, took him inside the temple in one chamber, into the innermost chamber, to the Lord, to the deity of Ranganath, and took the lamp and put the lamp before Ranganath's eyes. And when Dhanurdas saw Ranganath's eyes, by the mercy of Ramanuja, he became a pure devotee at that moment by Ranganath's mercy and Ramanuja's mercy. So he became a star disciple, so much so that everywhere that Ramanuja went, Dhanurdas would go with him. He would take him with him. So all the other disciples became envious. You know, this wrestler, Shudra, you know, low-class person, and our guru, we're Brahmins, and he's ignoring us. So one day, they got into an argument because someone had taken someone else's cloth, you know, like a piece of a gumsha, maybe basically a piece of cloth. They're all arguing about who took it. This is not, Brahman should be truthful, and so they brought their argument to Ramanuja, and he said, "Okay, I will resolve this." He said, "I want you to go to the house of Dhanurdas." And his wife has many beautiful golden ornaments, and they have a lot of jewels. I want you to bring them to me. So, well, how? No, we do it. However, you have to do this. They were bewildered, the Brahmins, but they went on the order of their guru. They saw the wife. She saw them coming, and she laid down as if asleep, thinking, these Brahmins, they need something. So they came, and they took some jewels, and they saw she had these beautiful diamond gold and golden earrings. And so they said, oh, we have to take those earrings. And as they removed one earring, she thought, oh, they need both of them. So she turned over. But when she turned over, they became frightened. They ran out and they came back. They were thinking, oh, finally, he will, because Ramanuja said, I will show you the attachment of Dhanurdas. Finally we'll see this attached grihasta. You know? And so they came, Dhanurdas came back, his wife explained everything. He said, you foolish woman, you only moved because you were attached to that other earring. No, I was trying to give it to them. It doesn't matter. Let us take everything we have, everything of any value, and bring it to the ashram immediately. So they brought all of their valuables, brought it and put it at the lotus feet of Ramanuja and said, my Lord, there must be some need. Therefore, we brought everything we have. Right here, it is for your service. And Ramanuja looked at his disciples who hung their heads in shame. We're supposedly big Brahmins fighting over a piece of cloth. And here's a grihasta who gave all of his possessions when there was need to do so. So they all bowed down to Dhanurdas. And I forgot one little pastime, a very quick one, which Srila Prabhupada told, and then we'll conclude. So one day, Ramanuja had a disciple. I can't remember the disciple's name, but his wife's name was Lakshmi. Prabhupada told this story. So Ramanuja was coming to their house, and she knew that he was coming. So they knocked on the door, and she spoke from behind, my husband's not here. So Ramanuja could understand that the reason she didn't open the door for her guru was because she was so poor that she had nothing to offer. So he said, I will come back later. And so he left, and she thought, he's going to come back. We have to feed our guru. What can I do? There was one wealthy merchant who had propositioned her for intimate association, but she always refused. She was a very chaste lady. So she thought, what can I do? I have to feed my guru. So she went to the man. She said, all right, tonight, if you give me ghee and grains and fruits and vegetables. Tonight I will satisfy your desire. So the man thought, oh, yes, and gave her the most opulent boga. She took it, she offered it to her deity, she prepared a wonderful feast. Ramanuja came, her husband came, they all had a wonderful feast. Ramanuja left, and her husband said, how did you do this? She hung her head. She said, I'm sorry, my dear husband, I had to do this. And her husband offered obeisances. He said, you are the most surrendered devotee. You were willing to do anything to please the spiritual master, even taking the greatest risk. And he said, now you must go. I will go with you. So they went to the house, and uh, Ramanuja inspired the husband to say, bring the remnants of Ramanuja. So they brought the remnants, these beautifully delicious dishes. The merchant took a little bit of that Mahaprasadam, and he started crying. He said, this lady is so surrendered. She is the most chaste woman, and I am the most sinful man to try to corrupt her. And therefore I will give you, you will never be poor Brahmins again. I will always take care of you. And so Prabhupada said that this chastity means dedicating oneself to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and taking every risk to do so. Of course, this was all done by Ramanuja's mercy. This is not something that any lady would normally do, but it was such a special circumstance that the Lord arranged everything so wonderfully that she turned out to be the most chaste lady. So anyway, these are some little instructive stories from the life of Ramanujacharya. There are so many other stories, but I don't want to um, take up too much time. We could probably spend 2 or 3 more hours with different pastimes from Ramanujacharya. But in any case, I'll conclude here by saying that these acharyas, on their appearance days, we beg their mercy for appearance or disappearance days, that whatever qualities they exhibited, let the Lord at least give me one drop of those qualities in my heart, which will flood my heart and my consciousness with unlimited waves of devotion. At least that's what I try to pray. That if I get one drop of that mercy and that purity, then I will be able to flood my existence with pure devotional service. So, Hare Krishna, thank you very much for listening. I don't know if there's time for a few questions, if there are any, or what the schedule is.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for a wonderful class.
Haribo, Shyam Sundar.
And your kind association. Maharaj, it's so nice to hear from you, as I think you are the most recipient mercy of Srila Prabhupada, that somehow or other you have to dedicate yourself and completely depend on Krishna's, because in your tenure service as a GBC, Krishna give you the zone which is really poor. So I see in your life that you always has to depend on Krishna. Could you share us something? Because as a Grihastha, we cannot even dedicate even 3%, 4%, 5% of our life. So could you please give us your realization? And the second part is how important it is that to take some responsibility on behalf of your spiritual master to further their movement. What is their driving force for you despite so many difficulty? You remain so steadfast to perform your duty to manage the real poor zone.
Well, although sometimes I perceive these things as difficulties, when I meditate on it, I can see it's only Krishna's mercy to purify my stubborn heart. And therefore, if there's any apparent difficulty, it's only the opportunity to be in some apparent difficult circumstance But then when I reflect on the beautiful devotion that those devotees have, that somehow or another, by some little service that I'm providing, that combined with the service of all the other Vaishnavas gives the opportunity to serve, then it's the greatest reward. That's the only thing I can see. There's nothing greater than the opportunity to serve the Vaishnavas, which is, of course, one of our topics for today. So I see that Krishna is giving me so much mercy to serve devotees who may be in what could be considered a difficult circumstance. But I find that people who live in difficult material circumstances have the tendency to become more dependent on the Lord and his devotees. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Bhagavan Narada, I see your lotus hand. Oh.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, my obeisances. Can you speak a little bit when I hear these pastimes, especially what you're speaking of earlier, when I think about the word acharya, I think, I mean, as far as within our institution, could you speak a little bit about succession and empowering others? It seems like at times, like Prabhupada would empower a disciple according to their ability. And at times it seems like he would just empower somebody with something they couldn't normally do. So how are we able to distinguish these things within a management setting or an admin setting? Like, you know, I wanted to get some commentary on that.
Well, we have Shyam-Sundar Prabhu present, who knows all about management and many years of management. Management, for Srila Prabhupada himself said, management can be a headache. But without management, just before Srila Prabhupada left, Giriraj Maharaj said that, you know, that we have to, by following your instructions and by your mercy, everything can go on. And Srila Prabhupada said, by intelligent management. So empowerment is not always just some electromagnetic ability to perform some task which normally would have been beyond my abilities. But empowerment means specifically to try to see how to situate each devotee. And that's not something that one's initiating guru can always do, especially in the environment of ISKCON, where many of our disciples may be, you know, in previous times, all the disciples lived with their guru. And he would send them out, they would go out, come back, go out, come back. But in ISKCON, we may not see our guru for years, or we may, some people never saw Prabhupada. So we're being empowered by general instructions and specific instructions. So that empowerment takes place either in the beginning by our gurus, Diksha or Shiksha gurus, or by Srila Prabhupada's empowerment, by the holy name's empowerment. We are inspired to utilize our abilities in Krishna's service. But sometimes the spiritual master asks us to do something either directly or through others that is not according to our nature. And that is an impetus to surrender. It shouldn't always be that way, but I can say in my case, I was never inclined to management. And I've been at GBC for 34 years. And before that, I was a regional secretary. And before that, I was a temple president. And I was told by Prabhupada that I should do Sankirtan. So I finally realized that my Sankirtan is to try to help others to do Sankirtan. And that's somehow or another that my devotional life unfolded in such a way that it was never what I wanted to do. It was always what I was told to do. And I'm very happy for that. So whether we do what we're good at or whether we do what we're placed in a situation to do, the success is to do it to your best ability. And that is the empowerment. Once we do that, we give everything for Krishna, then Krishna empowers us. But if we give a little bit, then yetamam prabhadyante tamstataiva pajamyaham, then Krishna will give us that much. And the rest will be provided by the only other person around, Maya. There's Krishna's domain and Maya's domain, which is part of Krishna's domain. But so the best thing to do in any situation, whether it be that managerially or otherwise, everyone's expecting something of me which I don't feel capable to give, we try to give it. And even if we fail, that failure is a success if we did our absolute best to perform that service. That is the empowerment. Empowerment doesn't always mean success. Success in devotional service means to surrender. That is the ultimate success.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Here's Hare Krishna. There's some comment there, some rogue comment. So, any other question?
I read in some ISKCON site, it said something that Ramanuja Acharya said that at the time of death, as devotees, we try to think of Krishna, but he said that it may be that we won't think of Krishna, but that's okay somehow. I don't know if that was.
Well, he's a devotee of Vishnu. He taught through Vishnu the principle, the Achinta. He was more closer than any of the other acharyas in his philosophical teaching to Achinta Veda Veda Tattva. But he taught Achinta Veda Veda Tattva in relation to Lord Vishnu. And therefore, his teachings in one sense are closer to us than the teachings of Madhvacharya, in whose sampradaya we are. So therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu amalgamated all those teachings from those acharyas and made it part. That's why we're the Madhva Gaudiya, but the Gaudiya is the main one. Madhva is where we officially come from. Gaudiya, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is where we fully come from. And then that's carried on by our parampara. So Ramanuja played such an important role because he introduced the principle of Achintya Veda Veda Tattva, or simultaneous one and different. Otherwise, we are one with the Lord because we're of the same spiritual quality, but we're different because we're of minute quantity.
Thank you.
Haribol. Wasn't Ramanuja, here's a question, wasn't Ramanujacharya Lakshman? Some people say he there's a different opinions about his identity. Some say he was Lakshman and others say he was empowered by Lakshman. So one way or the other, he was definitely in the embodiment of that. Why Lakshman and why not Ramachandra, whose appearance is coming up in a few days? Because Lakshman was so surrendered to Ram, and that's why he had to exhibit that exclusive and total surrender, and considering himself just an unreserved servant and an unqualified servant. Yes, Kamalini Devi.
Jai Hari Krishna obeisances. Thank you for such a thorough explanation. I'm just curious, could you tell me which book you read and to have all this wonderful information that you shared tonight.
Well, there's one book by a devotee named Naimisharanya Prabhu,
Mhm.
which I guess it's still in print. No, that was a book. It was probably the most thorough. And I've seen other biographies which just came from the same sources that, different biographies given by different Gaudiya Vaishnava devotees. But that was the most thorough one. And that's the book I would recommend. It's really super, super thorough.
It's a hardback book, is it?
A hardback book. And some people have it. I know some people have it as a file.
Oh,
So, I think if you look around, you'll find someone who can even give it to you an electronic copy
oh,
or
And,
get the book.
yeah.
I
Do
would
you-
recommend both.
I just came across this and maybe you're familiar by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. Can you see it? The life and teachings of the four acharyas.
Okay, I haven't seen that book. Who did that?
Well,
what
it's
did that-
it's by Bhakti Siddhanta, but Bhumi Patti
Bhumi Patti. I never
translated
saw
it
that.
and Purna Pragya edited it. And it's some time ago. It first came out in 2007.
Wow, amazing that I never saw it.
Yeah, second printing 2010. Some of the details are different, so it becomes a little confusing because I always think whatever I read is like absolute. And then yet you hear, like you were saying, some people say he is Lakshman. There's like different kind of nuances or opinions. And so it's hard to know like even it says his birth, there's different opinions when he was born, things like that.
Yeah, that's because among acharyas, there are different perceptions of details according to their devotion, their humor, their mood of devotion.
Mhm.
They may see things differently, just like Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur condemns anyone who goes near the camp of Chandravali.
Mhm.
So this is a mood. Now, obviously, anyone who follows Chandravali, who's the first expansion of Srimati Radharani, that is obviously a great devotee. But in the mood of Srimati Radharani, she's the competitor. So when you get these different moods of devotion, people who are these acharyas who are so immersed in that devotion will see details in different ways, but the essence of their teachings will always be the same.
Mhm.
So that's the important thing. And the details are interesting, just like in the, what's that? Trying to think of the scripture, which tells about Krishna's pastimes. What's the name of that? I could just slip my mind right now. Anyway, that's particular scripture. The name will come to me. There are very different details of
Like-
Krishna's pastimes.
Gopal Champu? No?
What?
Gopal Champu?
No. Gopal Champu is
Oh.
pretty faithful to the Bhagavatam's version. What's the name of that? Famous and sometimes a little controversial. Just slipped my mind.
Mm.
Anyway, no. Garga Samhita, the Garga Samhita.
Uh-huh.
Now, but that doesn't mean it's not true. It means that some of those pastimes could come from different eras. Some of those pastimes could come from, different things that just weren't recorded in the Bhagavatam. So the Puranas sometimes have different versions of the same pastime. And Sri Jiva Goswami explains that these are coming from different times, different millenniums, different manifestations of the Lord, which are constantly going on. So the point is that the details may differ, but the essence will always be the same.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. So I got to thank Winston Prabhu here for giving me this link. Unfortunately, it will disappear. I have to try to copy it. Going to copy it and put it somewhere else. Otherwise, as soon as we hang up, it will go away. So I'll copy it and I will click on it so it's there. So, so I think, unless there's any more questions,
Well, thank you so much again, Maharaj, for a wonderful class tonight.
thank you for your wonderful effort to bring these events to the devotees, you and Sarvabhauma Prabhu and Jair and everybody who's working on your team. We need teams like this. You know.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.